Are we good, Noah?
You are indeed, sir.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm glad everybody joined us today. I'm Josh Tashiro, the Colorado Section Society Range Management current president. The Colorado Section Society for Range Management welcomes everybody to this webinar series and would like to thank the Colorado State Land Board, West Greeley Conservation District, and Western SARE for their financial support. We'd also like to thank Pawnee Butte Seed and the Colorado State Conservation Board for their support. And lastly, our president-elect, Emmett Jordan, for putting together this webinar series today. We got a tight schedule, but at any time during the webinar, please use the Zoom question and answer function to submit questions for the presenters. Everybody will be able to see your questions. I will quickly now turn it over to Ben Berlinger if Ben is on.
I'm here, Josh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce the 2019 Excellence in Rangeland Conservation Award-winning ranch. The 3R Ranch of Beulah, Colorado is owned and operated by Betsy and Reeves Brown. The Colorado section of the Society for Range Management typically has a summer field day recognizing the range management stewardship being implemented on the ranch. That didn't occur this past summer. So in place of the field day, the Colorado section decided to have a virtual ranch tour. I know you will sit back and enjoy this video tour of the 3R Ranch.
Know that I can really explain why I want the land to be better, but I feel a God-given responsibility that we were given this piece of land temporarily to do the best we can with it, to make it the best we can, and I feel very driven to do that, and very, very, very satisfied by little increments of progress with it.
My motivation to participate in a conservation policy or program for the ranch is when you look at what land and nature gave us before it was beginning to be somewhat abused, before we knew how to manage a resource. And you see that example and how it can be lifted back to that, and the abundance that comes from a very well-managed ecosystem.
3R Ranch is located southwest of Pueblo, Colorado, about 5 miles southeast of the town of Beulah. The ranch is operated as a cow-calf production system. Sim Angus cows are run year-round on the ranch.
We have about 65 paddocks or little pastures of about 100 acres each, and we move the cattle through that, continuing to move pretty often so that the land gets plenty of rest before the cows come back in there to graze.
Well, the mission statement states that we want a biologically diverse, productive, high climax ranch with happy people and ecosystem health, basically, and that includes the wildlife, all the wildlife, the vegetation, the people, and everything working in harmony. We've seen filling in with the impact of the hoof action of congregating the cattle together in an area, and there's more impact on the bare ground that in fact helps seedlings grow, and you help cultivate the soil and turn the plant material over and incorporate that into the ground, which helps the soil and helps water cycle. Those improvements are really there.
So how we manage through drought through years is, it's pretty simple. The HRM method implanted, in the 80s here has allowed us to this day to be able to, have grasses that are more drought resistant. They're able to thrive a little bit better in dry conditions. And then grazing techniques have really sustained that. If you're able to, we're grazing right now, it's been dry for 3 months. All Colorado's in 100% drought. So without this, we would be at a feedlot probably in June.
The holistic resource management model is what we operate our ranch under or by. And it is looking at the whole of everything on the ranch and all the interactions from the people to the cattle to the soil, finances, anything. It all goes into the whole. And we try to use that whole to make us make better decisions.
The real reward is seeing the whole lifted and the productivity of that whole with more wildlife, more birds, everything in sync, and then you have more production, more grass, and typically more livestock production. You can extract more from a very abundant ecosystem, and that's what's exciting. Well, if we were going to start over when we first bought this ranch, the sooner we learned the HRM model, we would have just been on our way a little sooner.
Early on, I think we were pretty oblivious to soils. It took us about 5 years in holistic resource management coming into our lives. That study, that education. And at that time, then we realized that grass was so important. And as we grazed and rested and had long rests, we saw huge changes from a short grass country to longer grasses and mini grasses coming into the country. We saw the cows doing so much better. We could run so many more cows per acre.
Be a significant impact, hopefully, with the surrounding landscape of ranching. And we hope that we have something that people will look at and think, I'd like to do that too. So we are that convinced that it's the right thing to do. It's good for the land, and it's good for the people, and good for the community.
Well, great video, Ben. Thank you for helping put that together, Emmett. And again, congratulations to the 2019 3R Ranch for their award in the Excellence in Range Conservation. At last year's SRM annual meeting, Dallas Mount provided an overview of principles taught by the Ranching for Profit School. This year, he shares a look at the Executive Link peer-to-peer learning program and will lead a panel discussion focused on the strategic drought management and decision making. For those of you that don't know Dallas, he is the CEO of Ranch Management Consultants, known for their Ranching for Profit School and Executive Link program. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dallas and the panelists. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Josh, I'm on audio, but I'm having a hard time starting. There, my video came up. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. It's a joy to be here today. Excited to be with you guys again. Really had a lot of fun in Cheyenne last year with you, and we're thrilled to be able to pick it up. So we're going to talk about peer-to-peer advisory in agriculture. And the video we just watched, I think, really underscores the importance of getting this right, of helping these businesses that are so important to our land, our economies, to helping them remain successful. So I think this is one of the tools in the toolbox to help get it right and help these businesses be successful. So let's step back a little bit and stop thinking about agriculture, but just start thinking about business as a whole. So what determines success in business? As you start thinking about the different businesses you've seen that are successful and have gone on to grow, or those that have ceased to exist, what are the real key things that determine success of those businesses? And now let's bring that back to agriculture. Well, in ag, it's totally different than Main Street businesses, right? Well, no, it's not. A lot of the key things that determine success in agriculture businesses are really the same things that determine success of any business. The challenge is that a lot of agricultural businesses, when you say, why do we do it? What are we here for? You hear the word lifestyle a lot. And I think it challenges us to step back and say, well, is it a lifestyle or is it a business? And what comes first? And when you start looking at the things that really bring us joy in it and that create that lifestyle that we want to be a part of, the fundamentals of that, the things that make that happen, are getting the business principles right. So we want something that we enjoy. We want something unmute. Okay. How's that? I can't see anybody on video, so I hope you can hear me okay, but I'll keep going here. So we want those things to be right, and really getting the business pieces right are critical in that. So this is probably an analogy that you've heard us talk about before, but I want to take it one step deeper, and let's think about the correlation between agriculture and sports, right? So in sports, there are amateur athletes and there's professional athletes. So amateurs do what? Amateurs pay to play, right? So if you're a part of a sports league or something, you generally pay your dues, you pay for rink time, court time, you pay for coaches, those things. So generally you pay to play. And professionals do what? Well, they get paid to play. Okay, so just like in sports, in ranching, there's amateur ranchers and there's professional ranchers. A lot of people in the ranching world are paying to play. Okay, their businesses are not profitable. They're having to subsidize them with off-farm income. The only reason they're ranching today is because they were started with a whole lot, right? If they had to create it from scratch, there'd be no way you could do that. And then there are quite a few professional ranchers, and those are ranchers that are getting paid to play, right? Their businesses are profitable. They can expand. They can bring people into the business. So there's a lot of real keys to that in that correlation between amateurs and professionals. But let's take this one step further. What about coaching? Okay. Well, when a professional athlete hits their career, right, they've hit the pinnacle of their career, they're in the big leagues, they're as good as they can get. So when they hit the professionals, they no longer get coached, do they? Well, no, that's silly. Right? Of course, think of football. There's defensive coaches, there's offensive coaches, there's special teams coaches. There's a coach for almost every position. And in fact, you could say professionals get more intense coaching than the amateurs do. Okay? Well, do you think that holds true in ranching? Okay. Well, I think it absolutely does. I think that's one thing you'll find that distinguishes the professional ranchers from the amateurs is the professionals get coached and they seek out that coaching. So who coaches professional ranchers? Where do we find that? And, well, you could look to, consultants and advisors and those kind of things. But what about if we look to our peer group and other people that are having the same struggles we are, that are in the same challenging environments and looking at things? How could we set up a coaching network of that? And so that's really where we want to transition to the introduction of Executive Link and this idea of peer-to-peer coaching. So Executive Link is built on the idea that none of us is as smart as all of us. And there'll always be something to gain by surrounding yourself with other people that are interested and asking good questions and taking time to listen and dive in deeply. So what we're going to do is we're going to transition to about a 10-minute video that we looked for the most succinct way we could give you a taste of what Executive Link and really peer coaching is. And the way we decided to do that was to do a produced video that was done at our summer meetings this last year. So we're going to give you a taste of that. Now, this is not a sales pitch for Executive Link. Okay? I don't want you to hear it that way. What I want you to listen for, or I want you to look deeper into the message here and see what are some of the key principles for making peer advisory or peer coaching systems work well. So let's go ahead and switch to the video and we'll pick it up after that.
Every time we come, we walk away encouraged, challenged. Every time we learn something new, and just the network of people.
There's something out there big that we're not seeing. We try to look at things from all different angles. We're really good at dissecting things, but I just feel like there's something big for our company that we're not seeing.
So we needed fresh perspective to look at our business and show us the opportunities that we couldn't see. We found that pathway today to get the 10-time return on investment, and without having EL and without having our board pushing us, no, we wouldn't have got to that return. We've got some ideas, but they're small, and the board has challenged us to easily get to there.
I think we get encouragement each time we go to a meeting, and being held accountable.
This sounds great. It's all about accountability for me. These really are my board of directors for my business. Looking at my business is valuable, but I learn more looking at everyone else's business. I'll go home with a pile of notes on what I learned that they're doing wrong. Turns out I was doing the same thing wrong, but I couldn't see it till I looked at someone else. Or they're doing something right, or we came up with an idea for something to do right, and all of a sudden I realized we could do that too.
One of our biggest breakthroughs, I think, came from somebody else's meeting and somebody else's agenda. And when we left, I mean, it wasn't about what we went in for, and we came out with something totally different.
Every meeting, I see things in their businesses and from the other board members that I would not have thought about on my own. And it just is an incubator for great ideas and motivation and accountability.
There's probably 10 things in every meeting that we come away with thinking, oh, maybe we should look into that. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think if we were to write a job description of ourselves as board members, it's pretty wide ranging, but a lot of it is to be a good listener, to be a confidant, and to be a ruthless analyst in looking at other people's businesses, and to give people the brutal, honest truth about what you see in their businesses in a constructive manner that's going to make them or help them improve and help them, give them the tools to come to decisions or conclusions themselves, come to the answers themselves.
You know, it's our job to look at their materials and find what they're missing, or find things that could potentially be an issue for them that they haven't thought of.
The role of us to be on the board is to ask the hard questions that no one else will ask, to make sure that you've dug everything out that could possibly become a problem, also to dig out the positives. But you know, you don't always look for those things yourself, or you're not willing to see things sometimes that are right in front of you. And so as I feel like that's our job, is to help kind of mine that stuff out.
And if that takes 84% of our time to help the other ranchers on our board, that's a cool deal. I mean, we're there to help them, they're there to help us, and that's the fun part, is trying to help the other board members with their business decisions. That's the powerful part of it.
So my job as a board member is the old cliche: teach a person to fish, don't just give them a fish. I might actually know the answer to their problem, but the thing is, they don't. We got to ask them the right questions. One of the most valuable things I've learned is just to ask people and let them tell you things. Farther than that is listening to understand.
They push you outside of your box. They push on all of your assumptions, on everything that you have done in the past, and they say, why? What are you doing? And I feel like we get to the heart of things, and they make us feel like, well, we've dreamed bigger, and we have a bigger vision for ourselves because of coming to our board. We have we felt limited in our dreams because we thought they weren't possible before.
We would have never got here without Executive Link.
No. And we've only been here a year.
It's a structure for the meetings that's pretty disciplined and on task and on time, and having that process and procedure probably gives the comfort level for people to share what they need to share and share what they want to share to solve problems and create solutions.
You have to have some discipline, you have to have some structure to get anywhere at one of these meetings, or else we'd be here all day going around and around in circles. So yeah, the structure is awesome for these meetings.
We have a time factor. There's a certain amount of time to get things done. We have to get down to business. We have to talk about the difficult things. There's a how and when we're going to talk about them and how we're going to close out our meetings. You have to have that structure.
Every time you go to a cattleman's convention or the wool growers convention, everybody gets together and they talk. And look how much progress that is made from standing around in a circle talking. Instead of just going in a circle discussing what could, what if, maybe, you're always approaching an end. And I think the board, there's enough flexibility and enough experience, at least on our board, that there are times where just the roundtable discussion is valuable. But being able to bring that back together into a structured meeting and move forward is invaluable to me.
I also feel like the structure allows everybody to get their time out of the meeting equally, and come away with the same experience as far as action plans at the end. I feel like if you did not have that structure, some people's businesses might not really delve into what really needs to happen.
I think having standardized procedures like the structure we just talked about, and also the forms, that everybody comes with the same materials, and preferably doesn't come with the materials, preferably distributes them 2 weeks ahead of time. But I think if there's standardization amongst them, then we're kind of like comparing apples to apples.
Our members want to be effective, so yeah, we want the stuff out so we can look it over and review it and think about it, have time to think about some stuff on their Fox form before we get to the meeting.
You have time to think about everything several days ahead of the meeting, so you've had time to process a lot of the stuff that's presented. There's a lot more that comes out at the meeting, but you've got your brain headed in the right direction before you get there.
I think there's extreme value in having the diversity, because it's somebody who at the base level understands what we're all doing, but yet they're from another area, they're being totally objective. So it's like fresh eyes looking at your stuff. Even if it was other businesses that weren't ranching businesses, I think there would still be a lot of value, and even maybe more value, because they would ask tougher questions about why our industry does what we do.
We want people outside of our box, people that are coming from all over the country to come up with new ideas. If we don't have that diversity, then we're all doing the same thing and having the same ideas.
And if we want opinions from people who already do what we do, we could just go talk to our local community. I mean, that's right there. So we're trying to find some new things. And
I think diversity always brings more ideas and more knowledge of different businesses to the table, which again is like it's like the yeast to make the bread rise.
It's really valuable to have the broad spectrum of people, whether it's age, experience, geographic location, because that brings so many different things than essentially my neighbors would to something like this. My neighbors go through the same things, they have the same paradigms that we do. And so to have somebody maybe be able to break that paradigm somewhere else is very valuable.
Trust is one of the main factors that makes EL successful, but I think there's also a culture there that drives the success. EL has a reputation of you can go into a board meeting and what happens in that board meeting stays there. and you can divulge with these people, and you can laugh and you can cry, and what happens there stays there.
Another big component is the lack of judgment that is there. The lack of judgment really helps people open up a lot.
Confidentiality is sacred. It's not something you walk into the coffee shop and just proclaim to everyone, but at this little room with these people that you trust, you bare your soul.
Everybody is just as concerned about the other businesses as they are about their own. We're losing sleep over their problem. If it's a big problem, we're right there with them, going through it with them.
The people on our executive link board care about our business.
As if it were their own.
Yeah. And we feel the same way about their businesses. We leave here exhausted because we feel like we've put our heart and soul into their businesses.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I thought that would be the most effective way to give you a glimpse at the effectiveness of a well-run peer advisory program. And just a few things to pick up on. So you heard them talk about EL, and I think that's people are drawing on their own experiences, right? And that's where their experiences come from. But what we're looking for today is to have a discussion about the power of peer advisory and how we can put that into place in our lives. Some of the things I wrote down that I thought were keys out of what they said is listening to understand, asking good questions, the importance of process and structure, the value of diversity, and then the importance of trust in that boardroom. So those are some of the principles that I picked up on. I meant to do this in the introduction, but just to give you a glimpse of it. So the way we do it in Executive Link is these boards come together 3 times a year. Each time they come together, it's 2.5 days, and we put 5 or 6 businesses on a board. And generally, you'll have 2 representatives from a business. So generally, the board sizes are 10 to 12 people, and all that seems to work pretty well. The process that was laid out there, round 1, round 2, round 3. So we go around, and each business has about 2.5 hours of focus time on their business across those 2.5 days. And we'd have some other processes that we do in there, but it's a pretty tightly managed process where you really need to be succinct in your presentation and in the feedback that you're getting. And probably that's an important point, is that feedback is really why you're there. So if you spend the whole time talking during your time, you're not going to have time to get that feedback. So with that, the rest of the program today, I really want to stop talking and bring in some people that are on the as panelists with us today. So we've got Nobles, Nick Trainer, and Sarah Bangert joining us today, and they're all involved and have been involved for some time in the Executive Link program. I was also looking through participants of the call, and we've got some other folks that are as attendees that are joining us that are also EL members. So I've asked these guys to each share with you some stories about their time in EL and maybe add to some of the conversation that was open during the video. So I'm going to throw it to Nick first, if you wouldn't mind. Nick, jumping in and maybe sharing some things. What would you add to what we've already talked about?
Can you hear me all right, Dallas?
Yeah, we got you.
I think I'll just kind of echo some of the things that went through that video. To me, probably the most important piece of what they were saying on that video is the trust factor. Having the confidence of knowing that what you bring into that room stays there. And really, it's kind of liberating. You can talk about anything, and oftentimes the big problems in a business aren't something you want public, and that's what makes them so tough to talk about. That's huge, knowing that you can bring anything to the table, and you don't got to worry about your neighbors hearing about it. You don't got to hear about your competitors hearing about it. That's invaluable to me. I think that's huge.
Nick, I should have asked you to do this initially. Some of the people on the call probably don't know who you are and what you do. So give us the snapshot of you.
Oh, snapshot of me. So We run cow-calf stocker operation in Arapahoe County, just east of Denver. Got a little lease in Weld County too that we operate on. Been on the big lease here since 2013. Operate on about 28,000 acres. That's kind of the story.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks. We'll circle back around to you, but let's throw it to Sarah. Sarah, what would you have to add?
All right. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Well, they've summed it up pretty well as far as a peer advisory group, but one of the big things for me was in my situation, they helped build my business pretty much from the ground up. So I operate my business, which is a prescriptive grazing and meat goat enterprise by myself. And I started it from scratch without much of an ag background. And so basically with my peer advisory group, they gave me the confidence to get to where I'm at. And another huge thing for me is the networking, not only within the board, but also with EL in general. So without the networking, I wouldn't be where I'm at, because it gives me the opportunity to talk to other folks about their experiences with their businesses, other ideas, things that I should try. And I guess that also brings me to the paradigm shifting, which we talk about quite a bit in Ranching for Profit. But, you know, everybody operates in this paradigm of what they think is right, what they think will work, what their community does. And with the peer advisory group, that helps you break outside of your paradigms and make that shift to think about things a little differently. And that's been huge. I know in my community, what I'm doing is not something that's done. Small ruminants really aren't even in our county anymore. And so without the ideas and the help from the board and the other folks in EL that I've met that are also running small ruminants, I definitely wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at. So that's part of the safety I think that they're talking about too, is you're able to talk about recs that you wouldn't talk about with other people in your community, or good things, and get some feedback on those.
So Sarah, give us a little bit more details on your business. What do you guys do? We already know you're weird because you've said small ruminants now a few times, but give us a few more additions.
So I operate a fairly large goat herd, so running about 600 nannies to mostly do brush mitigation here in Southwest Colorado, Southeastern Utah, and New Mexico. And so we take the goats out, use them to knock back mostly gamble oak to improve range conditions for ranchers and do some fire mitigation. And then I also produce goats for meat.
All right, great. We had a question come through. We've heard you mention EL. EL stands for Executive Link. It's a peer advisory program that RMC runs, and what I want to focus the conversation on today is not what we do in EL or how we do it, but looking deeper at the value of peer advisory boards, and no matter what role you're in, no matter what you're doing, how might you plug this into your life? So if you're working for a place somewhere, maybe even working for an agency, how can you tap into the value of effective peer advisory boards? So great. Thanks, Sarah. Let's throw it over to Nobles. Got Ryan and Ranella there joining us. So before I forget to ask, guys, give us the introduction and maybe share about what some things you'd add, and maybe if you have a personal story about something that you guys have delved into throughout the peer advisory program for you. You're muted. You might need to click your unmute there.
So Ranella and I are out here in Yuma, Colorado, and I'm a fourth generation family rancher, and we run a cow-calf operation and a breeding heifer program. You know, our main focus out here is to raise authentic cattle for authentic ranchers. You know, we want to build heifers that'll fit their environment and work along with Mother Nature. But anyhow, probably some of the biggest benefits that we've got from being on the Yale board is, you know, what this does for us is it forces us to intensely focus on our business at least 3 times a year. And when we walk away from this board meeting, we have a plan. And biggest thing for us is we have a shared vision. We've come to the meeting, we've hashed out the problems, we've vetted some different avenues, and when we walk out of there, we are ready to move forward. And for the next 3 or 4 months, we are on exactly the same page to get the same thing done. And for us, that's just invaluable. We don't always think we have a strong agenda walking in there, but it makes us really focus on our business, and as well as our family time, our personal stuff. And you know, I was kind of always the stay-at-home and work guy, because that's how you make money, is by working. And it got flushed out in an EL meeting that Ranella thought I was spending too much time on the ranch, worrying about the ranch, and I'll let her tell the rest of the story here.
As our personal story goes, you know, it was a lot of family life was being not taken care of because we were busy working. So you talk about that. And another point is, it always doesn't have to be about cows. So our board listens, we come up with a plan, and then they're saying, well, maybe you need to be home by 5 o'clock every night, or maybe you need to take a total of 3 weeks vacation a year. And so, and when you leave, this is one of our action plans. And when you leave, on there, it's written, put on the calendar 3 weeks of vacation time, and who's in charge of it, and the date you're going to have your first step done by. And so, or it's another one was drought plan. So it's family, it's drought, it's work, it's play. It can be about so many different things that are going to help your ranch sustain itself.
Cool. Thanks for sharing the story, guys, especially that really hit home, I think, with a lot of people. So let me, I guess, throw it back open to the three of you. And as you want to chime in, jump in. What if people are on the call thinking about, boy, how could I tap into this in my life? And maybe Executive Link's not the right fit. Maybe they want to bring together a group of peers and do this on their own, which is great. What would be some advice you'd have for them as to how to structure this to make it the most successful that it could be?
Dallas, I'll give you a little tidbit to that effect. I think I talked to a lot of people. I'm probably one of your best advocates for RMC, just because it's had such a huge effect on my business. And basically every young guy I talk to or gal that's trying to break into this business, I say, get involved in EL or a peer group or HMI or whatever. Get involved in one of them. And the common answer is, well, I'm not big enough. You know, I only got 100 cows, and you know, once I get to 200, then I'll feel like I'm big enough to be involved in something, you know, like RMC, and that's a huge mistake. I mean, that is the opposite of what you should be doing. You know, RMC and Executive Link, those people are there to help you get where you want to be. And I wish I would have got involved in it much sooner. I would be in a completely different place than where I mean, we've made some huge strides in our business, but I don't even like to think about where we would be had I got involved in something like this sooner. So I guess my piece of advice to a young guy trying to break into this business is get involved in it sooner than later, because you'll get to your goals a lot faster. I can guarantee it.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. We often hear people say, well, I'll do this or I'll do that when I get to this size. You know, maybe it's doing the economics. Well, I'll do my economics and I'll do my grazing planning when I finally get to 100 cows or when I finally get to 200 cows. And I love your point that, you know, you don't wait till you get to your goal to start acting like it's a real business, right? You have to act like it's a real business in order to get there. So I love your point. Sarah, Ryan? Vanilla?
You know, I would say that well, I agree with Nick, you know, and I know this isn't we're not trying to advertise for EL or RMC, but it's an amazing program, and I think more people should look into it. I think the diversity that comes with that is huge, just to get out of your little bubble in your community. But as far as if you're looking for something a little smaller, outside education is always a good thing. But I know for me, over the years, what I've done is been able to pick out some producers in my area that I think are thinking on the same lines as me and trying to do things a little differently and be a little bit more progressive. I also do some rangeland environmental consulting for some ranchers. And so what I've been able to do is just kind of reach out to these folks in my community, whether or not we were friends or they were clients or not. And we don't have a structured group. I'd like to get one together here, but it just hasn't happened. But it still is good to have somebody in my county, in my community, that I can call and talk to about some of the more progressive things that we're doing. Like, for instance, custom grazing is just not something that's done here, really. And that's something that it was a new thing to me. I think could be very useful in our community. And with reaching out to a few of these producers that are thinking outside of the box a little bit, we've been able to open that up to some of them for something to be useful to help support their business. So I think having a structured group like Executive Link or going through RMC is great, but otherwise just starting to reach out to people in your community that you think you can trust and who are outside of the typical coffee shop stuff is a good way to start.
So building on that a little bit, man, it's so much easier to find that person that you kind of want to model after and reach out to them. I don't know hardly anybody that wouldn't be happy to share their knowledge, share their passion, share their interests about their ranching business. You know, if you're a young person or maybe you're pivoting in your career or whatever, and the best thing you can do is to find that person that's kind of doing what you're wanting to do in the future and model it. And then just keep finding these people and use them as mentors and keep bouncing ideas off of them, because they're gonna enjoy your enthusiasm. And I enjoy talking to people like that because it keeps me sharp too, and makes me rethink some paradigms that I've been building up over the last 30 years. And I try to give them a straight answer, and part of that requires introspection on my part, that, hey, am I telling these guys the right thing? You know, I'm like Nick, though. If we've been in the RMC model for 5-6 years, man, if I'd have been in it 20 years early, the sky would be the limit. I mean, we've really made some big moves in the last few years, but I think about if we'd have been that streamlined and focused when we first got started out, it would have been a lot easier path. And you know, we spent a lot of times proving negative